evening from London, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for pro wrestling insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. Today, there was a huge announcement, so we have a lot to talk about, as TNT officially announced a new 2-hour weekly Saturday wrestling show titled AEW Collision, and the announcement was made ahead of what is a jam-packed AEW Dynamite show tonight. So we've got a lot to break down and a lot to get into. But joining me first, the co-host of the podcast, Clark. How are you today, Clark?
I'm doing so well. It's Wednesday, May 17th. I'm just stoked to be here once again. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. We all know what that means. It's Dynamite. We got a ton to talk about with Collision and everything. We've got a new guest. We've had this Wednesday tradition of Team RC, me and Rob Clark, Rob Chaos, on the ones and twos. We're back once again. We got all four of us. I'm just delighted to be here, to say the very least.
And yes, as Clark just said, we've also got Chaos here today. How are you today, Chaos?
What's up? Good evening and good afternoon, everybody. It's so good. 4-man team. As you know, Clark is always me and Clark on the Wednesdays. But yeah, we got a new challenger to the team. Without further ado, let's get straight to it.
And yes, we have joining us for the first time another new face here at Wrestling Republic, David. How are you today, David?
Hello, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to be talking AEW today. There is so much to talk about, so I won't talk too long. Let's get on with it.
Absolutely, it's going to be a jam-packed show. And let's firstly talk AEW Collision. That's what everybody wants to talk about today.
What's that?
Yeah, in case you haven't heard, during TNT's upfront presentation at Madison Square Garden today, a new 2-hour weekly AEW show was announced called Saturday Night Collision. The logo for the show and the entire branding for it is blatantly inspired by the original WCW Nitro branding, so it's quite a bit of a throwback, which a lot of the internet wrestling community are loving. Miro, Thunder Rosa, Andrade, Samoa Joe, and Powerhouse Hobbs were all announced to be headliners for the show, whatever that means. The show will run from between 8 to 10 Eastern each week and will go head-to-head against most WWE Premium Live events. There was no mention of a brand split or a draft, although they do have two different 2-hour weekly shows now, so it's entirely possible they could do that. And there was also no mention of a new deal for AEW Dynamite or Rampage. Of course, Tony Khan still got that announcement tonight. So it's like, what could it be about? Could it be, has maybe CM Punk sorted things out? Could he maybe be coming now? We know there's a second show. Is it maybe they're going to try and figure out a way to keep him on one show with the Elite on the other? But that would require a brand split, which we've heard nothing about. It is quite interesting that they, spoke about headliners for the show and didn't use the top names in the company, which kind of hints to me that maybe there will be a brand split of sorts. And they basically put everybody on AEW Collision who, hasn't been on Dynamite lately, who hasn't been on any AEW television as of late. Powerhouse Hobbs is that exception. It's like, I don't know why Powerhouse Hobbs is with those names, but still, if this means he'll get more of a spotlight on him, that is great. But it's an interesting one. It truly is what this means for the future of AEW. Running a Saturday night wrestling show is ridiculously challenging as it is. So it's a big gamble for TNT and AEW, but make no mistake about it or whatever, TNT and Turner and all that they'll be completely aware about the fact that WWE Premium Live events run, so they won't be judging those weeks, I presume, as harshly or whatever. But there's a lot of interesting things about this news, so I'll head to you first, Clark. What do you think about it all?
I love this because I think there's two things that have been dearly missed since the 90s and 80s. There's two things the 90s and 80s got right, and that was Saturday morning wrestling and Saturday night wrestling. And we've got one half of that equation back in play. Saturday night wrestling, something to look forward to. There's not a lot of sports competition on Saturday nights outside of college football season. You don't get a lot of NBA action. You don't get a lot of soccer games, cross programming and whatnot like you do on a Friday night. And I think this is huge for AEW, especially given the second hour. This is and it's back to the roots. It's back to the old school, which I love. I love that aspect of it. It's Saturday night wrestling, right? Like you have your long all day Saturday, different walks of life. 6, 7 o'clock, you flick on the wrestling, and settle into the couch and have fun with the family. It's perfect. It's time slot wise, it's so much better than where Rampage has been stuck.
Yeah, 100%.
That I think it's just a massive upgrade, and that's my biggest takeaway from this is we're now in a position to have a chance to do something special here. Like Rampage, think about it. The majority of the fan base that's watching Rampage is also watching SmackDown. I get exhausted after the first 2 hours of Raw. And then you give me the third. If you're going to go 2 hours of SmackDown and then the third hour of Rampage back to back on a Friday night, you're kidding me. That's just a stuck time slot. On a Saturday, it's a little different. People go out on Fridays and then have a rest day Saturday, often. And given this time slot and the 2 hours, this is a better opportunity for them to really show us something. As far as the roster is concerned and what you said about that, I hear where you're coming from there. It does seem like a lot of names that we haven't seen on Dynamite, but I'm curious to see what you guys have to say as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly an interesting one. I mean, it kind of does scream to me about a bit of a brand split type thing based on the names they announced. Although it would seem like quite a bit of an uneven, unless maybe you did throw CM Punk in there if he does return. But then also, if they were doing a brand split, why didn't they do a draft? Why don't they be like, well, WWE, here's how you do the draft or whatever, and do it more like the NFL draft? We got Bailey here on the YouTube comment saying, Clark, I think you forgot about Saturday Morning Slam when saying you haven't seen wrestling on Saturday morning since the 80s and 90s. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think
I've seen it, just not of the same quality.
What do you mean? No, Daniel Bryan talking about bears? It's not the same quality as.
Oh gosh! But David, what do you think about all of this?
I mean, when it comes to the I'll focus on the. I don't know enough about late night Saturday broadcasting in America to know what it's going against. But in terms of the announcement of the names, it was a very peculiar set of names. I do wonder if a little bit of it could be Rampage has fallen a long, long way from when it first debuted. You had all the Punk stuff very early on, kind of became that draw, and then it slowly but surely fizzled into nothing. And so now, with them launching a second show, I think what they want to do is they want to give it a distinct identity, which is ironic, really, given they've got WCW Nitro branding. But by putting names on that list that have been underutilized, have not been on programming at all. Even for Powerhouse Hobbs, who is, has had major programs, he does feel a little bit like he's spinning his wheels again. And so it feels like a good way to kind of turbocharge that. Thunder Rosa's not been on television, Miro's not been on television, Andrade, God knows. So it feels like an attempt to go, look, here are all these stars you really like that you feel like aren't being used correctly. Now here's a television show where we're going to use those people. Look at how different this is from the other programs. What I'm more interested to see is whether or not this press statement that the focus on these people actually sticks to the promise, because it's very, very, very easy to sit there and go, yes, we've got these stars. These are the stars that we're going to really, really push really heavily, and then just do it for a bit and then have it fade and fade and fade and fade and fade, and again fade into nothing, and then it feels like a waste of a show. So, and then you're back to the same old broken promises again. So I think, it could be, I'm very, very fascinated to see, where that goes. I'm excited because it's more wrestling and we love more wrestling. Yeah. And so, but I'm very curious to see those particular names, whether they may have shot themselves in the foot by basically going, these are the guys we want, because then if they don't use them down the line, or we have another Punk situation, we have another brawl out, or Thunder Rosa gets more issues, or Miro gets creative frustrations, or Andrade goes again, and then you're looking at this statement and it immediately looks out of date and fans will turn on you quickly. So I'm excited for the show. I'm just curious to see what they do with those names.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was certainly weird for them to announce the names they did, because usually you overpromise in a press release. And the stars which they named, I mean, it's not like it's their biggest stars, which makes me think they probably will stick to it. But Chaos, a few weeks ago on the show, we spoke about whether or not there was, space when AEW first announced that there would be a live Saturday show, and the rumors all started and all of that. We spoke about whether or not we thought there could be space for another 2-hour show. And in recent weeks, it's become more obvious about how much they're plugging ROH on AEW TV, that ROH TV currently isn't doing very well. And you can infer that, which isn't really surprising, but also that's behind a paywall. It's a very different situation. But do you still think that there is room for another wrestling show, another 2-hour wrestling show weekly?
Oh yeah, 100%. We, like I said before, that we were crying for having to have an alternative back before AEW was even created, and now we're getting more quantity in terms of just more options. If you want to watch all of it, then that's your prerogative. No one's forcing you to watch everything. We know how Rampage is playing out. You know how Dark is. You know how All Access is, and all this kind of stuff. If you want to consume that, then fair play to you. So that there's always time, and there's always room to have more content. It all depends on how they actually handle this show. This kind of gives me, like, they're trying to go for, like, what they have the two major shows. Say for example, this Dynamite is Raw, and Collision could be SmackDown, and then Rampage could be their Heat, or main event, yeah, that kind of thing. And this, since they stopped with Dark, they can push their all their new up and comers onto Rampage, and then just treat the show, especially if you're you have, like, the champion MJF on there, and looking from the poster, these look like the people that would definitely be more than open to working with Punk, if he show. But I've there's some conflicting things about it, because I just read that Warner Brothers Discovery actually came out and said that CM Punk won't be affiliated with Collision. I don't know if that's a swerve. I don't know what's going on there. So but yeah, in terms of what you think, if there will be a split, what you said earlier, I'll just put my 2 cents in there. I think there will be a split. It just makes sense. Give the people that haven't had the platform or the screen time this show, and then just put everything in it. Just don't leave it there and fade away like you did with Rampage, So yeah, I'm happy with the time slot. I'm happy that it's 2 hours. I'm happy for the new show, and just looking forward to see how the stage is, how they're gonna really implement this, and will be people transitioning between Dynamite and Collision, depending who they are. I think I'm definitely looking forward to it. Yeah, it's a great great move for AEW. No word yet on that $1 billion deal, though.
No, nothing about the TV deal.
Yeah,
like people are saying on social media, $1 billion and all that stuff. The fact that they didn't mention Dynamite today makes it seem like, that's not got a new deal yet. And they didn't really need one yet, because there was an extension clause in the previous contract for another year anyway. So that's not necessarily anything bad. Don't worry about that, AEW fans. But yeah, I mean, you made a great point there, and also, Warner Brothers have apparently a Warner Brothers Discovery representative has told comicbook.com, like you said, that CM Punk is not going to be part of Collision. Actually, I don't think it's the exact quote is not going to be part of the advertising for Collision, which makes it seem like the wording of that kind of makes it seem like, okay, maybe they are trying to.
It's a little bit like how CM Punk wasn't part of the branding for Rampage. But everybody just winked at the camera enough.
Yeah.
And then they filled the United Center, by the way, without any
based on a rumor.
They filled the United Center. That's double the size of Now Arena, where they do All Out. As a Chicago kid, United Center is where the Bulls play. Yeah. And the Bulls can't fill it every night anymore. Yeah. And they should be able to. That's shame on you, Chicago. As a Chicagoan, That's no good anymore. We got to fill the Bulls games. We need that. The team's good again. But Punk filled the United Center on a rumor. It was, I mean, those chants, all of that, it's absurd. And it's funny, though, because for in-arena experience, you made some great points. And with Rampage and Dark and all of that, those tapings being on the front and back end of Dynamite or Collision, though, for the live experience are of value. Like, for example, in LA, because it's a live show on TNT, that starts at 5 p.m., period. We had to be in the arena on a Wednesday night at 3:30 for it to matter. And they're taping Dark along the way. And then, boom, Dynamite starts. Then there's a 30-minute break and they tape Rampage. I'll tell you what, after those 2 hours and how electric Dynamite was, and that was, of course, the trios ladder match that night, but we didn't want to leave. It's 7 p.m. at that point. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, 30-minute break, get some food, get a drink, and now we still have Rampage. There's value there for the live event experience, and that is not to be overlooked. It's important. And I just hope that it, as much as Rampage isn't what maybe the expectations were initially when it was made, I hope that style of taping, the dark matches and stuff for the extended...
Dark has officially gone.
Right. But just at least having matches for the fan experience, right? We showed up at 3:30 and Claudio Castagnoli's entrance music hits. He's having a dark match and we were stoked. Walking down to our seats, we were stoked. Didn't matter. It was basically a squash against some nobody, but at the end of the day, it's exactly how you'd want to walk into the arena if you're there on time, kind of, you know what I mean? And then you get to the main show, because if it's only those 2 hours, that's hard, even for SmackDown tapings. That's why you see those dark matches post SmackDown, or hear about them almost like it's a house show. And that's not to be overlooked. For the live in-arena experience, 2 hours with commercials is not enough.
No,
it never has been.
Great point there. And I mean, they've started taping ROH in arenas lately, so it seems to me like what they'll do is they'll do Rampage with Dynamite and then Ring of Honor with Collision. That's what.
That's correct. You hit it on the head. That's what they do. They will do it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that's what makes the most sense. So yeah, I mean, also on the poster, very interestingly, is Orange Cassidy, who of course is the AEW title changes name every other week champion. No, the AEW international champion, and there's also MJF. So I mean, on the possibility of there possibly being champions between brands, I mean, unless maybe they just keep the TNT title on Dynamite, it's probable that if there is a brand split, they would move between brands. But I don't know. It's certainly a weird one there, and it's what they will do. I'd like to see. I honestly think that a brand split. I think AEW probably do have the talent to do it now, and I think there's enough talent as well to bring in from elsewhere. I think that it would work fine. The one thing that I look at this and I'm thinking to myself though is, if they do a brand split, would that actually make Collision more important to watch? Because at least then you have to watch Collision to see some stars and Dynamite to watch some stars. So then if you have, the same roster across both shows, you're going to do the major storylines or do the major moments from the major storylines on the one with the more viewers, which will probably, at least in the beginning, still be Dynamite. And I think that was what the issue was with Rampage. And also the time slot too, obviously. That was a big factor. But if you got two shows with the same roster, then you can do the major angles on the one with the more viewers. So that's why I don't think a brand split is a bad idea if you want two different brands to succeed. As for the Saturdays going up against the WWE Premium Live events, I'm not saying they shouldn't try. They should, still put on a good card or whatever, but just put on a normal weekly card against it.
But keep in mind, not every Saturday they're doing the PLE.
I know. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Just on the weeks where there is, they shouldn't go, full blown, save all the big matches for those weeks, because I think you're going to lose.
However, bear in mind, we are talking about Tony Khan here, a man who decided to put Minoru Suzuki versus Bryan Danielson on a YouTube extended version of Rampage just to mess with SmackDown.
Yeah.
And this is a man who, even though it will make be more sensible to not try and up the ante. This is Tony Khan. He's got a roster full of toys. He will use them in any way that he can for just to see what happens. And we could be in some fun counter programming if Tony Khan decides he wants to have a crack at it. He won't win, but he can have a good crack at it. And I mean, more wrestling is, more good wrestling will never be a bad thing.
Yeah, and we'll get people talking as well. So
absolutely it will. But let's move on now to the next topic, which is going back to last week's AEW Dynamite, and that is Don Callis. And last week, Don Callis turned on Kenny Omega during his match against Moxley, allowing Moxley to get the victory, and he shocked the world. It seemed like Callis and Omega had this grand plan for, decades ago. The plan started, and last week on Dynamite, the plan changed direction. Kenny Omega was no longer part of Don Callis' plan. And it was a full-blown... Omega's been a face recently on Dynamite anyway, but now Don Callis has left him. He's blatantly a full-blown face. I mean, the big thing about it is Konosuke Takeshita was, of course, it was Don Callis who had the ties with him. So perhaps could Takeshita be turning heel? And I predicted it last week on the show. I said, perhaps could we be getting, Blackpool Combat Club and Takeshita versus the Elite and Kota Ibushi in Blood and Guts after Double or Nothing. I'd personally love to see that, but there's a lot of questions that are left to be answered. And tonight on Dynamite, Don Callis will be talking. So, Clark, what is your thoughts on this, and what do you think Don Callis will have to say?
So I loved the turn. It was the proverbial screw job. Literally, not figuratively this time. Obviously, with the screwdriver, I loved it. It's the Jekyll. I mean, there's no bigger snake oil salesman in wrestling than Don Callis. He's always been that guy. It's just fun to watch to me. I've loved his heel work throughout his career. I think he's underrated, right? There's a short list of names of awesome heel managers that are still active today. And Chaos and I believe, not last Wednesday, but the Wednesday before, especially discussed like the Blackpool Combat Club post-Regal feels like why. If led by Don Callis, now I feel like there's something there. Don Callis could, he can sell anything to a lot of people, right? He's sketchy as could be. It's perfect. And if we're setting up for what you and I, Allison, discussed, that Blood and Guts match, I'm all for it. And I like it. Whether he takes Takeshita with him or not, I don't know. But I'm here to see what the old Jekyll does. The old, Don Callis has multiple tricks up his sleeve. He's as smart as could be, and I'm super curious to see how they play this out with the Blackpool Combat Club, with Danielson, with Moxley, guys who don't love to listen to authority. Not that he's going to be an authority figure, but that dynamic could be so great, especially with a violent group like this, and get Callis on screen more often because he's awesome. He's that good. He's that talented.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He is. I mean, during that first Kenny Omega AEW Championship reign, he was truly tremendous. He made, dare I say, he took the spotlight off Kenny Omega during the segments because he was so good. I mean, similar to what Heyman was like with Brock at times. Of course, as soon as the bell rings, you forget all about the manager. But yeah, Don Callis he's truly a key asset for AEW. But I mean, long term now, that's the one thing which I'm concerned about for him. Long term, I don't know what his involvement in AEW is going to be, because after this storyline, I mean, without Kenny Omega, unless they're putting him on commentary, which I wouldn't have a problem with, or maybe he's just going to be producer or whatever. In terms of on screen, I'm not sure where he can go from here.
He's the Jekyll. We can give him a new guy.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. And I mean, listen, there's a new show now as well, so there'll be new faces hopefully. So yeah, I mean, you can hopefully find someone for him.
Give him Wardlow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. That is an interesting
Wardlow.
That's
see what happens.
I really would actually like to see that now, Clark. That is a great shout. But let's now move on to the next topic, which is the AEW Women's Division. And the storyline, which I'm still not sold on, I still don't overly care about, in all honesty. And that is, and tonight there will be a trios match with Jamie Hayter, Britt Baker, and Hikaru Shida teaming up to take on the Outcasts, which are Saraya, Ruby Soho, and Toni Storm. I mean, these are basically the main 6 people in this feud this entire time. So they're going against each other tonight on Dynamite, trios match. Chaos, what do you think about it? Are you excited for it, or still not feeling this?
I don't know if you guys watch Family Guy, and then when that guy Buzz Killington comes on screen and he does some long monologue, and then after a while you see Peter Griffin go, that's how I feel right now. Simply because this thing is just not doing it for me. I'm just gonna keep this very, very simple. This is probably going to be my toilet break. I'm sorry. These are 6 great wrestlers individually, I'm pretty sure they're great gals. But this storyline, I just want it to be over and they all just split. If anything, the only way that this could get me interested again is if they end up having a blood and guts match. That's the only way they could that this will be interesting. It's not their fault. It's just that what they're given is just not being enticing enough. I just want this Outcast thing to be over and done with, and Saraya going to be what Saraya can be, and Toni Storm and Ruby Soho and Hayter being the AEW champion, women's champion, that and rightfully so, and Britt Baker start challenging for a title because she needs to be in this, not in this quote unquote third wheel. And another thing happening with Jericho and the JAS and all this stuff. I just want this thing to be over. It might be a passable match, but in terms of who I want to win, it's probably be Hayter, Britt Baker, and Shida. And they're just gonna get jobbed out. But this is gonna be my toilet break, or just skip past. I'm sorry.
If they do go towards a blood and guts match, then presumably they'll need somebody else on the Outcast side. I mean, who would you add into that faction?
Ideally, I can imagine them going for a powerhouse. So what powerhouses do they have? What, Nyla Rose?
She's homegrown, and that's the thing there.
Mandy Rose?
Who?
Mandy Rose?
I mean, that her and Renee Paquette have been teasing something lately, so who knows? Nah, Mandy Rose would have to be probably on the. Nah, I don't want Mandy Rose in this thing. Definitely a powerhouse, Nyla Rose, and then for the win for the face team, I don't know, maybe Willow Nightingale, because she's kind of part of this storyline as well. Yeah, if you want to push her, put Willow Nightingale with them, and then Nyla Rose. There you go, 2 powerhouses done.
Yeah,
just get over and done with.
We'll get a bit more. We'll get a bit more into blood and guts later as well, because I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't even thinking about blood and guts when it came to this feud. Although now you've said it, I'm like, that's definitely where this is ending.
It's technically a blood feud, so you might as well.
Although I'm now kind of getting the feeling of it, because I already had in my head 2 different blood and guts feuds. So I'll mention that a bit later on, though. But now let's move on to the next segment. And tonight on Dynamite, Ricky Starks and Jay White, their feud will come to a close. Well, maybe not, but they'll be facing off against each other. And I'm kind of surprised that this is happening on a Dynamite, not at Double or Nothing, a big pay-per-view. Perhaps they're going to do a stipulation match, and that is going to lead from here, whatever. But yeah, they're doing this big match tonight. Jay White has to get this victory, and he has to feel dominant, because it's early days from in AEW so far. But Jay White is so good, and he's not felt overly important so far. Now that easily could change. Like I said, it's really easy early days here. But I hope that this is the main event tonight. I don't think it will be, because it looks like Jericho Strong will be. But I mean, Jay White, Ricky Starks, this should be a really good match, and Ricky Starks is great as well. Usually, I'd always be, trying to put Ricky Starks over for the victory, but yeah, tonight I think it has to be Jay White. But David, what is your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I echo many of your sentiments, or mostly all of them, with White and Starks. I You probably won't find a bigger Jay White fan than myself. I remember seeing his main event with Kazuchika Okada in Dominion last year, and that was my second favorite match of last year. I was just bowled over by it. I think Jay White is an extraordinary figure, and I agree that I don't think he's felt nearly as special coming into AEW. I think the debut was a mistake. I think him running down, feeding like a bit part player in an opening segment didn't really do anything to me. I'm about to contradict myself now because I don't think this should main event because I don't think it's hot enough. To be honest, and that's not to say that it can't be, because Jay White, I think it'll be a great match. I think it should open. I think it should go about 15 minutes. I think it should be just gung-ho, and I think, of course, Jay White should win. I like Bullet Club Gold, although I do start singing the Spandau Ballet song every time it's said on television. I just start singing, always believe in your soul. But I like the stable, but I think they're two incredibly charismatic guys. I'm not surprised this isn't on the Double or Nothing card. Not because it's not a worthy match, because it just hasn't been built like it. It feels like we've got two guys who are incredibly charismatic, incredibly talented, great wrestlers, and who just don't feel anywhere near as important. You know, we had Ricky Starks go in for the world title not long ago, and now it just again feels like we've gone backwards with him, and we're back to kind of this, which it should feel bigger. Like a main event Jay White feud with Ricky Starks should feel bigger than this, and it's just it's missing something. Something's not clicking, and I think you need to. I think this is hot enough to open a show. I think it's probably not enough to close one, but I think it is enough to open one.
Agreed.
And I think that the two of them going out there, getting the crowd electric. Ricky Starks is so good at getting a crowd invested, as is Jay White. You know, his trash talking when the fans couldn't cheer in New Japan, and him trying to get them to cheer and berating them when they couldn't. You know, it's a great heel against a great face. Two great wrestlers. It needs that extra gear. Whether or not this is, like you said, a build to a stipulation match at a Double or Nothing, I don't know, and I wouldn't like to say. But I think it should have a decisive finish, and I think it should be Jay winning and kind of moving on from this, letting Starks go and do something else. I'd put Starks on Collision and give him a spotlight over there, and I would bolster Jay White up the card, have another feud, win up the card, another feud. But I would say that because he is one of my favorite wrestlers. So, and I think he deserves the world. It hasn't had the spark that I think it needs to, but I think it absolutely can get there because these guys are too talented to ever count the two of them out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You made some great points there. And like you touched upon, with Collision and stuff, Ricky Starks and Jay White, Bullet Club Gold, Ricky Starks and Bullet Club Gold, Collision would be a great place for them to be, have the spotlight on them. Whereas on Dynamite, there's a lot more people. You've got the Elite, you've got the Blackpool Combat Club, you've got the Jericho Appreciation Society. All of these factions, putting them on Collision would, give them time, because at the minute there's so many factions on Dynamite. Spreading them out a bit could help a lot. And also just Ricky Starks deserves more of a spotlight. So I think
absolutely.
David made such a great point about the trash talk, though. Like, Jay White is such a great trash talker. So is Ricky Starks. I think that's the missing piece. I think you kind of said it. You almost answered your own question after the fact, which was brilliant. I thought, because there is something missing, but it's like we're talking about two of the best trash talkers in the world, and we just haven't heard them grab that microphone and go jaw to jaw and talk about it and jab for jab and do that. And if they do execute that, I think that's isn't that I think that is the missing piece.
Yeah, they had a pre-taped vignette last week on Dynamite, Starks and White. They both spoke individually on camera, and for two of the best talkers in the industry, they sounded so wooden. And what the reason is because they were talking to a camera. They weren't talking to themselves. These are two guys who should be barbing at each other. You should feel that energy because they're so good. But when they're just kind of throwing out fairly kind of B-level insults to a camera, generic, you don't feel that level of electricity. So I really hope that in the match you can tell that story tonight and just get the two of them, just let them just barb at each other, because why not? It's a bit of fun.
Yeah, no, that again, some great points there. And as well, I mean, another thing with the video packages as well, I often touch upon this, AEW compared to WWE, the one thing I will say is that they don't often give their video packages enough time to breathe. It's like, okay, they'll quickly show you this after commercial break, and then bang into a match. They don't give it time to breathe and viewers to process it. So therefore, I mean, basically, people don't really pay as much attention to a lot of the promo packages in AEW, and even though that some of them have been really great, I mean, it's just they get overlooked a lot. But let's now move on to what is seemingly scheduled to be the main event of Dynamite tonight. In the announcements that AEW sent to us, this was top of the card. Although then again, some weeks they have sent stuff at the top of the card and then it's not been main event. But Jericho will be taking on Roderick Strong in a Falls Count Out Anywhere match with Jericho and the Jericho Appreciation Society banned from ringside. And there's an interesting detail in that, right? And that interesting detail is that it doesn't say everyone is banned from ringside, which makes me wonder, could a couple of old friends of Roderick Strong show up in Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish? We know Kyle O'Reilly's been on the shelf. He's been injured. The injury update he's given lately is that he's still not ready or whatever. But how many times have we heard that in wrestling? As for Bobby Fish, he's no longer with the company. But now they have Roderick Strong and another 2 hours of weekly television. Could they bring Bobby Fish back to form the Undisputed Era in AEW? That would certainly be, a bit of an insult, if you'd like, to Triple H. So I don't think Tony Khan would mind doing that and reuniting them in All Elite Wrestling. As to whether or not that'll happen, who knows tonight. I mentioned earlier, Chaos, when we were talking about Blood and Guts, that I thought that, I was really thinking about two Blood and Guts matches. The first one's obvious, the Elite and the Blackpool Combat Club. The second one I was thinking was that the Undisputed Era facing the Jericho Appreciation Society, if Red Dragon did return tonight. However, now you've said about the women's one, I'm kind of like, I don't think we're going to be getting the Undisputed Era in a Blood and Guts match. But Chaos, I'll go to you first. What's your thoughts on this match? Are you excited for it? Do you think it'll be good? And do you see any returns happening in it?
Yeah, this could be decent. I mean, I've kind of grown a bit bored of Jericho so far, especially with the JAS. By the way, is it me or does JAS actually have a drill song as their theme music? If that was actually pretty awesome.
They do.
The rest of the Goobers have a drill song. They're killing it with the theme song so far. The Guns with 50 Cent, Many Men, beautiful. Anyway, going back to this match. In terms of returns, you might see Bobby Fish and maybe Kyle O'Reilly if he's obviously fit to come back. Would they be on Collision? I don't think so, especially if Punk is going to be there, because Fish doesn't really think too kindly of Punk. So, but I think Roderick Strong will put in the work. Jericho, he'll be Jericho. The Falls Count Anywhere thing does make it a bit more interesting. It's not going to be a clean match in terms of you're going to see some shenanigans somewhere somehow. But this is most likely to be the main event. This could also work in the Blood and Guts. Adam Cole and Co do have experience in there, previously being in War Games. They could definitely do that. It's either going to be one or the other. This one or the Saraya feud. This one is also technically a blood feud, so this could also do it as well. Or they may do an intergender. Who knows? They might do an intergender Blood and Guts match. That'll be the first time ever in AEW. So,
Tony Khan said he's never going to book one. He said as long as he lives, he's not booking one.
Okay, right.
He's very. I remember it was a couple of years ago. He went into a rant about it. He does not like it. But David, what do you think about this match tonight? Are you excited for it?
I'm excited for it. I will say this: I never trust a wrestling stipulation. I feel like whenever they put emphasis on so and so is not in the building, feels like code for they might be in the building. Also, it's also worth noting that Sammy Guevara is wrestling tonight. They haven't specified who he's wrestling, but they've put on the graphic Sammy Guevara is in action tonight. Sammy Guevara is a member of the JAS. So they've on Control Center earlier on YouTube, Tony Schiavone frantically said, Sammy Guevara has to vacate the building before that match. I don't believe that. I think that's there's two reasons that Guevara is wrestling. He's either on because they have to build the main event, they have to build the Four Pillars match for Double or Nothing, or I could see, and I could be completely wrong here, I could see Guevara winning against whatever chump he wrestles, and then leaving the building before sneaking in the rest of the JAS. Adam Cole having obeyed the stipulation because he is a babyface and is not there. They all beat up on Strong, and if we're going to get the return of Kyle O'Reilly or Bobby Fish or somebody else, I think that could be how it's done. Because you want to feel the adversity. You don't want it to just be Jericho beating on somebody, because then it looks like an unfair fight. So
phenomenal point.
Yeah, I don't trust. Like I said last week when they said in the Christian Cage and Luchasaurus segment, when they said that Wardlow was not in the building, I spent the entire segment going, "When's he coming out? When's he coming out?" To the point it kind of ruined the segment, because it got to the end, I was like, "Oh no, he's not coming out." Oh, I probably should have paid attention to. I probably should have trusted TK, but I think the match will be really good. I really like Chris Jericho's Karen character. I think it's really funny. I think Roderick Strong struggled a bit on the mic last week against Jericho, but Strong is such a great wrestler and such a great fighter. I think it could be. I could see a rather brutal spot. I don't know what it will be, but I feel like Jericho loves. I feel like Jericho loves doing that type of thing. So.
Yeah, great points there, Clark. What about you?
David, I think you made such outstanding points. It's my favorite one is about the stipulation, and I'm in such agreement, but this whole Falls Count Anywhere thing, and they're banned from the building, not just ringside, right? Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
They're banned from
the building.
Ringside.
Well, just ringside. So if Falls Count Anywhere.
Right, building. Ignore me. Building.
The building. So
my
if
notes
Falls count anywhere, they still count outside the building. And I think this one might spill out into the parking lot. And that might be our spot for Bobby Fish. And for what we get out of the Undisputed Era, potentially. Either way, I'm more jacked, I think, than the rest of the crew on this match. I'm a big Jericho fan. Jericho knows what he's doing on this stuff. He'll get this one right. He really will. I believe in him. I still do. I think he'll get this one exactly right because of the talent on the other side, right? He did his best against Nick Gage. He did his best in scenarios over the last year and a half. We forget how great Jericho can be when the cards are dealt properly to him. Jericho has a good hand. He delivers. He bets big on himself and he delivers, and I think he's got a good hand tonight. He's got a good hand of cards to play with and a good story to tell. They're banned from the building. We haven't gone outside the building in a while. Why not tonight? That's the route I see it going, and that's what I anticipate is outside the building, and then that's where the story's told. The explosiveness, both sides, whether it's a return or not, it'll be awesome. It'll be awesome to see.
Absolutely. It is looking like a stacked Dynamite tonight. And of course, we've also got that Tony Khan announcement following the huge announcement of AEW Collision today. So what will that be? Surely he's not. He actually said there's going to be multiple announcements tonight. So it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to announce. Let's hope that they're interesting. And the future for AEW is certainly looking interesting. But that basically brings us to the end of the show, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you're over on YouTube, please leave a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. It helps us out massively. If you're over on Spotify, the 5 stars, and give us a follow if you haven't already. Those help us massively. We're here every single day, and we'll be back here tomorrow for Throwback Thursday. It'll be a Clark and Anthony show as usual, and that'll be a bit later at 11 p.m. UK time. And that is, what's that, Clark? In
3 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 Eastern.
Perfect. So guys, make sure you check that out tomorrow, and we'll see you then. Hope you guys have a great day and a great Dynamite.